Hello, comic book guys and gals, and welcome to Comic Mag Musings. I'm your host, Bill Miller. This video will be about third-party comic book grading and encapsulation. I will cover, to a certain extent, I'll detail the 3 comic book grading services that I have dealt with, from which I have books, and those are CGC, CBCS, and PGX. I'm not advocating for one grading company over another. I will say that the vast majority of the books that I have are CGC. There are some reasons for that, but I do have a handful of CBCS and PGX books as well. So let's start by saying why, by asking ourselves, why would somebody want to get a comic book graded and encapsulated? There are many reasons, right? Number one is all 3 of the companies do restoration checks. So if your comic book has been restored in any degree, that will be noted. They will conserve the comic book by putting it into a Mylar bag and then encapsulating it into a hard plastic case. I think most importantly, though, they will offer an independent, expert, third-party grade. So it makes the comic book more sellable, and it makes the comic book easier to sell to a larger audience. I think that's probably the key in this whole process, and that grading has revolutionized comic book collecting, because the biggest negotiating point when buying a comic book prior to grading was condition. The buyer probably undergrades it, and the seller probably overgrades it. And if you're buying it in person, that's fine. You can take a look at the comic book, take it out, look through the pages, and give a fair grade based upon your grading experience. But if you're buying a comic book on the internet, what you have to go by as far as ascertaining the value is the buyer's description as well as any accompanying pictures. And then you have to determine from those pictures the grade of the comic book. And the pictures may not, there may not be plentiful. They may be difficult to look at the corners. They may not be pictures of the right areas of the book. Certainly most of the pictures probably won't show the inside of the book. Maybe things have been cut out. Maybe the pages are tan, brown. It makes it very difficult to buy a comic book with any degree of certainty as to the condition when you're buying a raw book off of the internet. Grading companies have changed that dynamic. An independent grader said, "I've checked for restoration, and I've assigned, based on my expert opinion, this grade to this book." So it's essentially not debatable at that point. It's agreed upon immediately. The buyer says it's a 9.2. The seller says it's a 9.2 because that's what it's been established. It makes transactions so much easier, especially when you're buying something from someone that you don't know. So in my opinion, that's the way comic book grading has just revolutionized collecting. Now you can buy something from 3,000 miles away with the same degree of certainty, perhaps more, depending upon your grading experience, than you could have by buying a comic book from someone next door from you. So we'll go ahead and I'll go through the 3 graders. We'll start with CGC. I think CGC is owned by NGC, which is Numismatic Guaranteed Corporation, which is a coin company, and that's where grading came from. It came from coins initially. Coins were graded, and I think stamps to a lesser degree, and so we started with the poor, very good, good. Those are our coin grades. I think that comic books are so much more fragile than coins that ultimately there was a need for a more finite grading system, and that's kind of where we got the numbered system, with the 0.5 all the way through 10 gem mint. Some people don't like grading, and I can understand that. Some of the things I hear is that grading inflates the prices, which indeed it does, right? There's a premium paid for graded books because, again, you know exactly what you're getting. It's encapsulated. It's less likely to get damaged during shipping, all those things. And some people feel that they feel that they don't want to buy a book that they can't take and read at some point, which I can understand that too. I would offer that there are other avenues to go for that. You could have reading copies. You could buy trade paperbacks. There's so many reprinted editions of more collectible comic books that you can buy. You can get digital subscriptions to for almost all of the comic books that are in existence. So I do feel like there are some avenues that you can take that combat that idea that you can take the book out and read it. For me, I like it. I think it's a good idea. It's a way to protect your investment. I think it highlights the art that goes into making a comic book, specifically the covers, and it gives you some more opportunities, more possibilities of displaying that in a more protected and secure manner. So we'll start with CGC. They're worth the most. They're probably the standard by which other comic book grading companies are measured. They've been around the longest. They have a robust census where you can look up and say, you can validate based on the serial number on the comic book that, yes, this is a CGC graded one. There are this many graded in that particular grade, this many above, this many below, this many total, so on and so forth. You do need a membership to submit to CGC. Last I checked, it's like $2.99 a year, but then you get a credit for about the same amount as membership. If you don't have one, you can still submit a book, but it would have to be through someone like an LCS or someone who does have a membership. CGC is the most expensive. I believe it's $20 to get a modern book graded, and they have the longest wait times. So it may be several months from the point you send your books out to CGC to the point at which you get them back. They definitely carry a premium because they probably have the best reputation, whether that's warranted or not. They certainly do, and they usually trade at about 20 to 30% premium above CBCS and PGX. They check for restoration work. They can do conservation work. So if you have a comic book that you're not necessarily interested in reselling, but you want to protect and prolong it because it's falling apart and it's a key issue to you in some way, shape, or form, they can do some conservation work to at least arrest the deterioration of the comic book. They note pedigrees. So if you're not familiar with a pedigree is an original owner collection of comic books that has been identified, usually Golden Age, but more recently there have been some Silver Age pedigrees added as well. And to qualify as a pedigree, you usually have to have a pretty decent sized collection, and either the entire collection needs to be fairly high grade, or you need to have some key rare comics throughout the collection that are among the highest graded known. Pedigrees are usually named after the original owner or a state or city or territory within which the collection was amassed. So Don Rosa would be one, Bill Gaines, Oakland, Bethlehem, Winnipeg. Those are all different comic book pedigrees. And some people try to collect pedigreed comics. Maybe they want to collect all the comics from a certain pedigree, so they generally will carry a slight premium as well. Here's an example of a CGC book. Like I said, the vast majority of the CGC books, or what I say, the books in my collection are CGC. So this is one of my favorites. This is Conan the Barbarian #1. This is a CGC 9.2. And so I'll show you the label. But this is a universal grade. If there was restoration detected, it would be a purple colored label. If there was a pedigree, it would be written on the label, tell you what pedigree is from, but they'll give you any key indicators or any key facts about the particular comic that they graded. So in this one, it's Conan the Barbarian #1, Marvel Comics, October of 1970 was the published date. Roy Thomas story, Barry Windsor Smith and Dan Adkins art, Barry Windsor Smith cover. And this is origin and first appearance of Conan, first appearance of King Cole, and cameo. So the grade is right here, 9.2. And in this case, because this is a little bit later label than they initially had, it puts the interior page condition below the grade. It says off-white to white pages. And so that's important too. A book that's a 9.2 that has white pages will probably carry a slight premium over a book that's 9.2, same book that has off-white to white or off-white to tan pages. So the interior of the book is thoroughly checked, and if there's anything wrong, such as the cover being detached or a coupon being cut out or something like that from the interior, it will probably get a qualified grade, and whatever the issue is will be noted on the label. In this case, on the back of the label, it has some of that same information. So there's no law saying that I couldn't crack this open if I wanted to read it, but probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I would have to resubmit it to get it reholded, and at that point, depending upon how far I had it out of the case, it would probably get regraded as well. So that's an example of CGC. CGC does have a signature series. Those are yellow labels. So if a CGC representative witnesses the signer signing the comic book, then they will validate that as being authentic signature, and it will get the signature series label. Obviously, those have the possibility of carrying premiums as well, books that are signed and guaranteed as authentic signatures. They also have new black labels that they came out with specifically for pedigreed comics. So some of the pros with CGC are they're the gold standard for grading. CGC graded comics are worth the most. They carry a premium. And they do have a robust census. Some of the challenges with CGC are they're more expensive than the other companies. It's more expensive to get comics graded. The wait times are generally longer than with the other companies. And though they do have a signature verification service, it's not applicable unless a CGC witnesses the signature taking place. I think that this is probably something that they'll have to address ultimately. I think it's a big hole in their services. There are so many comic books that are signed by famous people that you may not have been there in person to get it, but you're nearly certain that that's a legitimate signature, or you're just not in an area of the country or the world where you're going to have the opportunity to meet that person to have CGC witness them signing it. And there are so many people that are no longer with us, unfortunately, and obviously none of those books would be able to be verified by a CGC representative. I think that's a big portion of the market that's not being served. Another issue with them is in pressing and cleaning. So all three companies offer pressing and cleaning services. So they'll do dry cleaning on books to get rid of dirt, pencil, maybe pen mark if they can. and they will be pressed. So it's a non-restorative process by which bends, folds that aren't color breaking, creases, can be pressed out of a comic book prior to being graded, in the hopes that it would attain a higher grade and present better. CGC offers this, but it's through a third-party company, so it adds a little bit of wait time to an already long wait time, because they got to ship the comics over to this presser, have the pressing company do it, and then ship it back. But also it presents another opportunity for the comic books to get damaged in transit, right? Anytime you ship something, there's an inherent amount of risk that the comics could get damaged. So this is just 2 more opportunities along the chain where comic books could get damaged, shipping there and shipping back to CGC. The next we'll cover is CBCS. So I've got a CBCS Spider-Woman number 13 comic book. And this one says Shroud cover and appearance, Marvel, April 1979, newsstand edition. Cover Dave Cockrum and Bob McLeod. Art Carmine Infantino and Al Gordon. Story Mark Gruenwald. It's a 9.4 with white pages. So if you look, that is the label. So CBCS, very, very similar. From what I understand, they have similarly stringent grading standards to CGC. They do signature verification both in the presence of the CBCS representative, and they'll do verification on signatures not within the presence of the CBCS authorized personnel, which I think is a big service. They don't have a census that I'm aware of, which is a definitely a challenge for them. Their books are worth less than CGC books. They have shorter wait times. It costs less to get a book graded by CBCS. So they do offer memberships, but non-members can also submit books. For a non-member, a modern book is $18. For a CBCS member, to get it graded would be $16. They offer free grading notes, which is good. I think that's an area that CGC could polish up in as well. It's nice to figure out why, especially if you're trying to get better as a grader, why did they grade this at a 9.4, whereas you may have had it at 9.6 or 9.0. Who knows? But it's always good to do a sanity check there. They do the same things. They check for restoration. They have in-house pressing, which I think is better, right? It ultimately results in less wait time and less opportunity for damage to occur to the comic books because you're just not shipping them as much. Like I said, I don't have a lot of CBCS books, maybe just a handful. Same with PGX. But as far as I'm concerned, if the price is right, I have no issues buying a CBCS book. And lastly, we have PGX. So this one is a Devil Dinosaur number 7, 9.4. We'll look at the label. So this says Near Mint 9.4, white pages, Marvel, October 1978, Jack Kirby art and story. And the data was graded December of 2006. Universal grade. Similar to the others. So PGX They also do signature and art verification. So art verification is, I think CBCS does this as well. Art verification is, let's say that the artist signs the book and then does a little sketch. They'll verify that the sketch was actually done by that artist who signed it as well, and it wasn't something that you or somebody else went in and added later. Because clearly a little original sketch could certainly add value to the book. They do in-house pressing, which is good. They're cheaper. So grading for a modern book is $13 the last I checked. And notes are available. Graders' notes are available. Some of the issues with PGX is their turnaround time's good, but they've had some bad press within the last several years with some potential shady things that were done along the lines of grading. They have a reputation for being softer and on grading and over grading books, not being as stringent. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'll leave that for other people to determine, but certainly the perception is there. They're worth probably the least out of the three, a little bit less than CBCS, certainly less than CGC. They do also the signature verification and the art verification for in-person signatures and sketches, as well as whether or not they have somebody there to witness it. So if you want something that you know has been signed, if you want it recognized as a legitimate signature, both CBCS and PGX will do a verification process where even though they don't have somebody that witnessed either the signature or the sketch, they will do their comparisons and let you know that it's whether or not it's legitimate. Obviously, that's something that's been around forever. That PSA has been doing that for years and years and years. It's not a terribly difficult thing. Probably something CGC needs to add to their arsenal. So those are the three companies. I know that there are other companies out there that do independent grading. Those are the only three that I have graded books from. As I said, the vast majority of my books are CGC. I don't have any issues with buying either a PGX or CBCS book, but the price has to be reflective of the company that graded it. I would not pay the same for a PGX or CBCS book as I would for a CGC book. It just doesn't make sense. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So if you have any questions, please put comments. I know that I can go into a lot more detail, but hopefully whether you're a seasoned collector or a beginner, you found some value in this. I think the biggest thing to take away from this is the fact that the grading system has enabled global buying and selling of comic books with a high degree of certainty over condition. And that's probably the biggest negotiating point in any comic book purchase or sale. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, I would appreciate that you subscribe or like the video. That way you can stay up on notifications for any new content that I drop. Thank you for watching this, and always remember that we're taking over the world one comic book at a time.